Derogatory comments are sometimes expressed by church people about the increasingly secular nature of Australian society. The decreasing numbers of people practising religion is often interpreted as their failure to connect with God, whereas it may arise from a failure of the church to interpret the society and the times. The task of the church is to try to recognise where God is moving and to what God is calling. In Australian society, we can find both the movement of the Spirit and the scope for the gospel to inform our culture. The national traits we prize and apply to ourselves are rightly claimed as real, even though they are sometimes observed in the breach. The first Australian canonised saint, St Mary of the Cross MacKillop, did not live her dedication in a vacuum. Her particular window on the gospel captured the essence of the movement of the Spirit in the Australian context in her time, not only influencing society, but being influenced by it. For instance, the relative absence of class distinction in Australia was mirrored in the equality of persons in the institute which Mary MacKillop founded, the Sisters of St Joseph. Contrary to European religious practice, Mary refused to have what she called grades or distinctions among the sisters or those to whom they ministered. But Mary MacKillop did not invent egalitarianism. She breathed it in from the society around her, and in it she recognised the action of God. The generosity of Australians in times of emergency, the willingness to help others, particularly the underdog, the image of the battler mirrored in countless lives across our nation, the love of a good time and plain speaking, and a broad acceptance of the loyalty and love in the concept of mateship are rich soil resonating in the gospel, in which the church can both plant and from which it must reap. Authority is not looked on as immutable in Australia and is often questioned and distrusted. Those in responsible positions who abuse authority receive particular disdain. There is an Australian impatience with pretence, especially when seen in those in high places. Hubris is often attacked through satire. People voice personal opinion regularly and freely, and there is a lack of observation of convention. The Australian Church is in a position to reflect on these Australian tendencies and to avoid using arguments based solely on authority. The sense of egalitarianism fosters fairness among Australians. If all are equal, then all should get the same treatment and all should be listened to as having something to offer. The relative success of Australian multiculturalism illustrates that people here are generally accepted for themselves rather than from their origin or social status. Australia was among the first nations to give the vote to women. Women's leadership is accepted as proper and good, an example of the major contribution of the influence of women in our society, while lack of opportunities for women in these roles is seen as a deficiency. Differences of ethnicity, gender or role must not be seen as distinctions between persons. The tradition of fairness for all in the Australian psyche is a gift of the Spirit, a gift to the world, a gift which is hand in glove with the gospel imperative to love all. A potentially rich mine for the proclamation of the self-gift of Jesus Christ is the paradox of the Anzac myth, a deepening grasp of the notion that apparent failure can be a potent source of human growth appears to have taken root. Some worry that glorification of war is the result, but as normal Australian common sense would not see the crucifixion as the glorification of torture, people can surely be trusted to use this yearly remembrance as a way of reflecting on suffering, on the futility of war, and on the deep social sins that lead to war. Opportunities abound here for catechesis on the death and resurrection of Jesus and on the Christian life. Alignment of church and state brings compromise and complicity, as has been demonstrated in numerous nations. Living as an independent nation in a secular society, the Church in Australia is in the advantageous position of being free to criticise government, media and other social forces where human dignity is at stake. This freedom of the Australian Church brings the responsibility to speak and act on behalf of oppressed peoples, especially in our region. The Lineamenta document states, "There is no escaping the fact that people's lives give force to their efforts at evangelisation. This is true of individuals and of the Church as a whole. Evangelisation is more done than said."